We want to talk about a really great article, Jason, that was in the Financial Post a few weeks ago by an author named Victoria Wells. And it talks about Canadians are richer than ever before, and they've never had so much debt. So, again, we go back to this whole housing boom that's been happening. And the article goes on to say that 2 years after the pandemic, Canadians now have never seen their net worth statements higher and never been in so much debt. Households have racked up the highest levels of net worth in the fourth quarter of 2021, up to $15.9 trillion, according to a new report from RBC Economics. That's $3.9 trillion, Jason, above levels of 2 years earlier. So we've seen Canadians' wealth go from roughly $11 trillion close to $15.9 trillion in the past couple of years. It's a staggering amount of growth.
It's amazing, and it's certainly not because incomes are rising that much. It's basically most of the jump is in wealth is thanks, of course, to the rising home prices and the escalating value of the real estate these days. Up 57% of Canadians' wealth gains over the past 2 years. 57% of their wealth is based on the increase of their home value. Home prices are up about 20% from 2020 to 2021, so still continuing to increase.
It's amazing. I think back, 5-10 years ago when you said you were a millionaire, you were a real millionaire. Yeah. Today you can own, the simplest of homes, and
it's not hard
in Toronto or anywhere in the country and be a millionaire. And I think one of the challenges that happens or comes with that is you start to believe the headlines, right? You start to believe all of your wealth is growing and it's all in your real estate. But in the article from Victoria Wells, it goes on to say that mortgage debt has rose $44 billion in the fourth quarter of 2021 and has climbed $300 billion. So mortgage debt of Canadians has rose $300 billion from before the pandemic began, Jason. Canadians' debt-to-income ratio is now at 186%. That means that Canadians owe $1.82 for every dollar of take-home income. And I can think back to 2009
I was just going to say that.
In the great financial crisis in the U.S. I think back then our debt to equity was around 110, 120. And since then, it's just steadily grown and grown and grown. And to a point now where Canadians actually are at the highest debt level we've ever seen in this country before.
I remember talking on the radio one day with you on our show about, I think it was $1.10.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how crazy that was, that Canadians are in debt $1.10 for every dollar that they take home. It's crazy. And of course, in the middle of all this, the interest rates are on the rise. It started off recently. The Bank of Canada raised it from 1.75. Over the next few years, we're probably talking the 3-4% range. So no question that the price of things are going to be going up. Of course, we all know about inflation. The price at the pump, it's $1.70, $1.80, whatever the number is. The grocery stores, all the food is certainly, it's increasing quite a bit. Just about everything everywhere is increasing in price. And although the government says that inflation's sitting at around 5 to 7%, but we know a little bit better than that. The gas prices are up 50 to 70%. The groceries are up quite a bit more. So I'm not sure about that 5 to 7%.
I think if inflation was running at 5 to 7%, we wouldn't be too worried these days. But it's a lot higher than that. And I've heard some economists say that the real number is closer to 15%. I mean, you can't. There's no description that says that, but in reality, that's happened. And what's amazing, Jason, is you look at interest rates today. They're still running really, really low when it comes to financing debt. Mortgages are low. Lines of credit are still relatively low. Back in 1980, I recall from an article, back in 1980, inflation was running at 13% in America. and they had to raise interest rates in the U.S. to 20%. So the Fed in the U.S. with a 13% inflation rate had to raise interest rates to 20%. And right now in the U.S., inflation is running around 8 to 10%, and it's still at rock bottom prices in the U.S. And we're as in the same boat here in Canada as well. So, something's a bit off here. Are we going to see interest rates start to rise? If that were to happen, this $300 billion of added debt in the past 2 years alone comes at a cost, right? So obviously, if you're paying more money to service your debt, there's less money that you have to buy things, which it potentially puts the economy into a recession point. Quick question here too is, how are we going to finance this down the road? So it depends on who holds the debt. So one of the challenges right now is, if you're out there and you're tuning into the show, are you living check to check? If you're living check to check, this is going to become really difficult. This higher interest rate component. Do you have a buffer in your income to deal with a rate increase? So if you're out there right now and you bought your house and you've got money coming in, money going out, is there a buffer to bridge the gap if rates go a bit higher? One of the other concerns right now is your mortgage variable or fixed. Again, if you're fixed, you're locked in, you're good, you know what you're going to pay for the next 3, 4, 5 years. If you're variable, Jason, and they do start to raise interest rates 1 to 2%, are you prepared? The fourth point here I want to talk about is, are you saving enough money each month? I mean, how many folks these days are just making ends meet with the price of gas, the price of food, the price of housing, the price of everything going up? Is there any money being saved? And the tough point these days, if you're a senior these days, if you're retired and you're on a fixed income with any debt, it's a double whammy. Your income isn't going up that dramatically, but your debt's going through the roof.
Yeah, and this pandemic, of course, has definitely taught us one thing: what happens if you're not prepared?
Yeah. And
some of the things the article talks about, if you're not prepared, there was a survey done by the debt relief firm Bromwich and Smith. 39% of respondents will get a bank loan or a line of credit if they're finding that they're having a difficult time paying bills. So in other words, sounds just great, eh? They're going further into debt to pay for some of their debt. It just doesn't make sense. The other part of the survey, 27% would turn to a family member. Makes sense. Or drastic measures, they'd have to downsize their home, and that would be the last resort. So it's not something that you want. You want to make sure you're prepared for this type of thing.
Again, with the article talking about, we've never been richer but never had more debt. I had a client of ours who has a $1 million mortgage on their beautiful home, and they're variable. And I said to them, are you getting by month to month? We're getting by. We're doing fine. We're paying our bills. It's all good. I said, so what happens if all of a sudden rates go up 2% and your interest payments on your mortgage go up by $20,000 net after tax a year? Are you prepared for that buffer shock or sticker shock, I guess? And they weren't prepared for it. So it's important that people out there, if you do have a variable mortgage and it's a sizable mortgage, just be prepared that it may get a bit more difficult month to month with rising interest rates. I guess, Jason, the best news from the article is that the majority of debt that people have in this country are mortgages, and mortgages are much easier to handle than if that was in credit card payments, home equity line of credits, car loans, and so on. So the good news, bad news is we've got tons of debt as Canadians. We're at the worst point in the history of our existence when it comes to our debt to equity, our debt to cash flow ratios. But the only good news is that if you're going to have debt, the best debt to have is mortgages.
Yeah, there's good debt and there's bad debt, and mortgages aren't too bad.
Exactly. Any last final points?
No, I think the housing prices are a big reason. Of course, 57% of the Canadian wealth gain is due to the housing prices. Whether that's sustainable or not, I'm not sure.
Yeah, and the last key point here too is that if you're out there right now and you have been one of these ones that have been borrowing from Peter to buy Paul and take from Paul to pay Peter and doing these multiple leveraging strategies with real estate, just be careful. Start budgeting in 1%, 2%, 3% higher rates and make sure you can cash flow it. And I always say, you can service your debt as long as the money's coming in the front door. So If you've got costs going out the back door, but money's coming in the front door, it's okay. It's when you don't have money coming in the front door and you've got these massive expenses that you've got to be careful. So, Jason, thanks again for coming out tonight.
Always
really
a pleasure.
For those out there, again, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.